Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Insight Interviews. This is an online podcast series hosted by the Rooted Futures organization, where we discuss business and career advice with leading industry experts. My name is Samuel Lacote. I'm the global president, and joining me as moderator is Colton Leonard, director of operations. For today's episode, we're delighted and grateful to be joined by Christophe Ridet, who is the founder and president at Wermois. Christophe, with his wife and business partner Elizabeth, has been leading the company for over 30 years, making it one of the most recognized and respected dancewear brands in over 60 countries around the world. With their background as professional dancers and their expertise in new business development and event management, they have been able to create innovative styles and unique aesthetics that cater to the needs and preferences of dancers of all levels and genres. So with that said, we'll start off with our first question. So when starting Wear Moi from scratch, what were the biggest challenges you and your wife faced in turning a creative idea into a functioning business?
First of all, thank you for welcoming me in your podcast. I think it's really a great initiative. I'll try to answer as well as possible to all of the questions. And let's start with the first one. I think the first the biggest challenge is when you start a business. I have an image in my mind is the image of a wheel, and basically when a wheel is still, you need to put a lot of strength to push that wheels in order for that wheel to keep starting rolling. And I think for the first 4 or 5 years of the business, the most difficult part was pushing that wheel in order to make sure that it kept rolling. And after a while, obviously, once you get the business, once you get people to know about what you're doing, then it's no longer a matter of pushing the wheel. The wheel will start turning by itself, and then you got to worry about the speed of the wheel. But I think that the first thing, which was the most difficult part initially, was to make sure that business would be coming in every day, especially when you start from scratch in your living room. The phone doesn't ring. I mean, it's really up to you to you are the one who's going to be making that business starting. So that would be, I think, the biggest challenges as a starter, really starting from ground level.
Yeah, so as you were talking about that wheel, as you continue to try to accelerate that wheel in growth, how did you preserve your name and image as a business as you continued to expand?
I think it was a lot thanks to Elizabeth and I background, and thanks to also Elizabeth's vision. I think from the very beginning, and I'll tell you a small anecdote about the name Wermois, which is a little difficult for everybody to understand, whether you're French or English or wherever you live. Wermois doesn't mean anything when you're looking at it in the first place, but it started really as a joke. It to me it meant wear me. I was so unsure of the fact that people would be buying our product that I thought that subliminally, if they were a brand name saying, "Oh, please wear me," that would make the difference. And because initially when I started the business, I had a very good relationship with my mentor who taught me how to sew and how to design. And this guy was American. So me being French and him American, it seems to be nice to mix the two together. But basically, we started with that very special name, what we tried to do is really put everything under that name. I mean, from the very beginning, and that was also something which I think was really strategic, is that when I stopped dancing back in 1992, and I started doing this really as a hobby, as a starter, and really for me to give up dancing, which was really a passion of my life, and trying to transition to something else, I had no idea of where we would be, where we are now. But what was important for me was to really push the idea of having something which was creative, and really making sure that people will relate to the brand as a starter. So from the very beginning, when we arrived, we started the business in Seattle, in the US. And I remember people coming to me and really saying, "Oh, you know how to make dancewear? Well, show me. I can buy this and I can buy that." And I from the very beginning, I tried to live up to whatever people were expecting. And usually they were expecting a lot more than I thought I could deliver. And just being challenged every time and doing better and bigger all the time was really what was important in focusing in that first stage of the business.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. And I'm sure preserving those same qualities has helped people be so much more connected to your brand as a whole.
Yeah, I mean the know-how is super important, and because I used to make the product myself, and being a former dancer, I knew exactly what my customer needed.
Mm,
The rest was really hard work and training and really learning from scratch. But every time, and I think it has to do with our background. As a professional dancer, you're just like a professional athlete. So basically, you don't leave anything in the corner. You work on every single thing that you have, on all of your ability, capability, and you're really trying to make sure that you're the best at what you're doing every day.
yeah.
That's super interesting. And Christophe, I know you mentioned initially we sort of talked about some maybe initial challenges. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, it's hard to, like bootstrap your business and
Yeah.
get it out there, especially in the first 3 years. On another interview you did a few years back, you mentioned facing some sort of challenges, specifically with a revolution in Tunisia, if I'm correct, which is where you had your factory, and then
Mhm.
also a tsunami which influenced your segment of sales in Japan,
Yeah.
which at the time represented 15% um, of your
Of
sales.
our business. I mean, we're really fast tracking there. So basically, 1992, and for the first 10 years, and I really want to say that to explain to your auditors, also to your audience, how it went. But basically, for the first 10 years, really concentrating on my ability, on making sure that I was doing the best things I could. Now,
Mhm.
fast forward in 2010, it's been already, so 2010, it's almost 18 years in the process. We've got a full operation working. I've got salespeople. I've got a team of people developing our product. And at the time, what happened is that right when we decided to start a company in Tunisia, the revolution happened. And I think the second thing, which is the most important when you start a business, is cash. And I think I would say it's the most important, is that no matter what you're going to be doing, it's great to have all of um, the people that you can surround yourself with. It's great to have the best idea. It's great to have people wanting to buy your product or your service. But at the end of the day, cash is the most important. And if you're not thinking about how much cash you can raise or how much cash you can rely on, basically you're more inclined to have problem when cash becomes a problem. And when the revolution happened in Tunisia, basically we started setting up a factory, and we were planning on setting up that factory based on financing. And the problem is that we didn't have not had the finance yet when we started the whole operation in Tunisia. And my plan was to start the business in Tunisia, start the operation, the factory, and then go back to the financial institution in order to raise money, in order to find that. The problem is that when I was in a position to go and see those financial institutions, the revolution had happened in Tunisia. And
Mm.
basically, Tunisia has always been a place where people make clothing, so it made sense for any French companies at the time to consider producing in Tunisia. But once the revolution happened, then suddenly that decision, who seems to be a very smart, was no longer smart, because no one's really knew what would happen next. So basically, that put us into a very difficult situation, because we had to find the money elsewhere than through financial institution. And the tsunami happened in the same process because that's the sort of things that can happen. I mean, right now, one of our big issues is the tariffs here in the US. I now have to face an extra 25% increase on my cost, which is
Mm.
not small.
Yeah.
But same thing. I mean, you adapt. At the end of the day, you adapt, and that would be what I think would be the third thing, which is important. I talk about the wheel. I spoke about the cash, but then the third thing is resilience. There's so many great ideas, so many great business which don't go through just because people who are running those business are not resilient enough. And when I
Mhm.
mean resilient is really, I've had experience several times where I really felt that the business was gone, and we survived. And every time you survive, basically, it gives you more reason to progress, and you're also learning a lot in the process.
Yeah, I think the idea of you talking about resilience is so powerful to our audience because when you go into entrepreneurship, there's almost one thing certain that you're going to have difficulties, you're going to have challenges. And to see a company like yours have those challenges and surpass them and be super successful today, I think that's very powerful for our audience. Kind of going back to what you were talking about within raising capital, you talked about how cash is king and how it's so important to growing business. What were your strategies of raising capital? Did you go to like venture capital or individual investors? And how did you maintain that these investors were aligned with your strategies?
Um, I rely mainly on two sources. One was partnerships, and that didn't work out very well, and financial institution. I would say financing, but through institutions.
Mm.
Our business is not a business where you can actually raise capital. I mean, the closing manufacturing is not something that people will be interested in investing in. That's number one. Number two, I mean, our market and our business is a very niche market. So there's not that many people who would be willing to put some money on the table and think, okay, well, I'm going to have a great return in 5 years' time, especially because we, with my wife Elizabeth, are so important into the success of the business. So usually investors invest in concept or invest in something that they know they'll be able to sell back in 5 years' time and make their return, which is not the case. I mean, we've always been here for the long run, so that was not possible for us. So the way I financed most of the business was through different organizations, which were in France, but also in the US as well. So I would mention, the Small Business Administration here, which is
Were
governmental.
these like banking institutions?
They're not necessarily banking institution. In France, they were regional. Um, they, they, they're they're funding companies which are going to be creating jobs, let's say, in the south of France. And
Okay.
they have different organization and different system where they either lend you the money or they might be giving you a small grant, these kind of things. But it was never I mean, financial bank institution, yes, I did got some finance from them, but that was like short terms. That would be a credit for a year, something short, because our business has a very important cycle. We do most of our business at the end of each year. So basically, we've got to raise a lot of money initially, or have a lot of money initially to build up inventory, and then we sell it back. But those were that kind of things that I
Yeah.
was able to do.
I actually have a quick question. I mean, it's sort of like a follow-up. When we discussed challenges, you mentioned the current challenge you're facing right now, which is the tariffs imposed
Mhm.
to imported goods. So maybe as like a question, and obviously maybe some of this like you might not want to share or is
Mhm.
like private information, but with maybe what you have and maybe just in general some sort of like what you've seen influencing the industry. Um, how have these tariffs impacted where moi and also in general, maybe the retail industry? How have you, as an individual and also as a company, how have you sort of like reflected this change in your pricing, Are there opportunities to make profit from these tariffs? And maybe just in general, what's your how are you dealing with the tariff situation in the US?
Okay. Well, first of all, just for you to understand, before tariffs took place, I was already paying on average 25% import duties on my product. I mean, I have some products where I actually pay 32%, and I have some product where I pay 15%. But on average, I've paid about 23%. And Tunisia is one of the countries where the reciprocal tariffs hit the hardest. So after some kind of negotiation, which I don't think took place or very little, Tunisia is being imposed another 25% tariffs on top of what I was paying. So I'm basically paying on average 50%
Wow.
now extra cost. I mean, luckily enough, my product, I buy my product, my US company buy my product from my factory in Tunisia, and my pricing are competitive. So it's not like I'm completely, I cannot make business anymore. But basically, this is the situation where we are now. Prices had started going up from April 1st, from the first, tariff raise. Some of my competitors started raising tariffs, especially because probably 50% of the goods were imported from China. So, and some of them are making them in Thailand, and some of them are making them in Vietnam. Not, I'd say maybe 10% of our competitors makes product in the US. So we've all been having to, pay more money for import than we were. But as an example, point shoes, which is a very expensive product initially, and point shoes is something that every female ballet dancers wear on a daily basis. We're selling for $85, $90 in the US, which is already a lot more expensive than it is in Europe. Now you can't find any point shoes for less than $125 to $130.
Wow.
And the price increase just went like this overnight. So everyone has been adjusting their prices to something higher. I mean, we haven't seen too much of a dip in sales right now. I think not all of the prices have been increasing yet. I actually increased my price in August. I did not increase my price to the level I wanted to increase it in order to cover all of my extra costs. I'll probably be increasing my price again in January. I'm waiting for the decision from the Supreme Court. It's possible that the reciprocal tariff might be one of the tariffs which might not be or may not have a legal stance, and that might be put into jeopardy. We don't know yet. But one thing is for sure is no matter what happens, I mean, I'm not seeing it only in the US. I'm seeing it everywhere where I export. Export procedures are becoming more difficult. And
So
yeah.
I know you talked about how you're seeing it everywhere. So in order to kind of help hedge your risks, are you looking at supply chain diversification, or is it really everywhere? Like there's no potential company that has less risk involved with
No,
it?
I think every company's, I mean, everyone is making stuff here and there. And I'm lucky enough to have everything being produced into one single countries. And I forgot to mention, but 99% of what we sell, we produce ourselves. We're completely vertical. So we're really able to see where we are. But basically, what I'm seeing is that even if sometime I ship stuff from the US to France, it's becoming more difficult. The paperwork has to be more precise, and it's the same when I ship in Asia. So you see on an overall that countries are starting putting more restriction or being more protectionist just because this is a much global trend than just in America. I mean, this is, I think, what's happening. It doesn't stop people from making stuff everywhere, but it's true that it's a bit more of a protectionism. And for us, the problem is even if I increase my price to a certain limit, my view now is that I have to concentrate or shift my business, at least in the US, more onto B2C than B2B, because my margins are higher on the B2C. I can control what I'm doing. Whereas on the B2B, my margins are so tight that I haven't got as much flexibility than I used to have. Bearing in mind also that the time it takes for product to be shipped from the US, from Tunisia to the US, is taking twice as much as it used to be before. So all of this together is what's making me putting a strategy into thinking, well, no, I should concentrate on B2C now and try to avoid having too much sales onto B2B just because the margins are smaller. And I don't know what's going to be the next things happening.
So running an international brand, as you've just stated, involves a huge set of logistics and decisions. And there's many factors to take into account, such as macroeconomic events like tariffs, for instance. Um, so as a business owner, how do you sort of, manage all these different operations? And how do you keep all these moving parts aligned to keep the business running?
Okay. I mean, first of all, I've started selling international from the very beginning. So I remember going to the post office. I worked in London at the time. And I remember going to my local post office and coming with all my packages, and I had some stamps, and the lady would explain to me that if I was to ship here and there, I would need some paperwork and everything. So I started that way. Right now, I I have three entities where I can ship from. So depending on the country, for instance, if I'm mentioning UK, before the UK was still in the European Union, I used to invoice the product to the UK from my French entity. They're no longer in the European Union, and they're actually being taxed at 10% if I ship from the France. But actually, there's a commercial agreement between Tunisia and the UK. So now my UK customers, I ship my product from Tunisia directly to the UK. So I'm being more competitive than my European competitors, and I do that every time. Like in South America, I've been shipping from the US until now. But now that there is that extra 25% tariffs importing it into the US, then if I ship to Brazil or if I ship to Chile, then it's becoming a lot more expensive. So I'm starting telling my customer that it might be best for them to buy in euro from my factory in Tunisia because the cost is going to be less. So I haven't got a magic recipe. What I have is the agility to be able to adjust to whatever is happening. Sometimes I will ship also from Tunisia to Singapore because it happened that the shipping costs there are more competitive. But that's what what I've learned from it is that I need to be agile in where I can ship from. And the other thing is that I'm relying on freight forwarders, which are good, but I'm also have internally the knowledge to be able to do the right paperwork. So, we've been hearing a lot about commodity code, harmonized tariffs. Those are things that I've been handling for the last 20 years, knowing exactly what commodity code goes onto a pair of tights or of a leotards or dresses, because depending on the commodity code, depending on the fabric composition, then you get different tariffs. So you got to learn all of those moving parts and just be ready for what is happening next. The good thing is that because we're selling in 60 different countries, even if there's something going wrong in one country, then there's always some things happening which will take over the rest. During COVID, because COVID did not hit the region of the world at the same time, I was actually able to have some kind of business sustain because while Asia started slowing down a lot earlier than the others, then we had Europe, then we had America, then Asia started back. So this is by having that large market, I'm able to navigate all of the geopolitical or others events for me to be able to stabilize the business.
Yeah, Christophe, I think that's very inspiring that you can juggle so many different operations. You're looking at these things, and then you're looking how tariffs affect it, and then manufacturing. So obviously, with doing so much every single day, how do you manage your time efficiently? And can you run us through also how you get your news? Like are you driving, then you look at the news, or what does your day kind of look like?
Okay, so I read a lot and I listen to lots of news as well, but I usually read the New York Times, Washington Post. I read also Le Monde. I also listen to a lot of podcasts, so I'm always getting my information. I'm not going to be getting that I mean, those information I'm not going to be able to adapt it to my business right away, but it's given me a good sense of what's going on. You know, like for instance, China, that's another one. I grew a lot in China 4 or 5 years ago, and then it started slowing down. So I'm following up what's happening there. You know, they have a big real estate crisis, which is really putting the whole economy down. People don't necessarily talk about it, but I know about it. So I'm waiting. I'm thinking, well, maybe at one point it's going to start again. So that's how I organize the way I can get the information. And again, because I've gone through so much already, that I know that at one point something will change and I'll be able to adapt. And in terms of day-to-day operation, I mean, I now use a lot more AI than I've ever done before. It's probably giving me 30% more uh, capacity
Wow.
in answering all of my emails and everything. But I usually start early because my French operation, by the time I wake up, I've already gone through a whole morning. So I'm going to be taking care of all of the emails from France first. And then by 2, 3 p.m., it's starting slowing down. And I'm going to be then concentrating on longer term project. And I also work on Saturdays and Sundays. And I work late too. And along with that is that Sam mentioned it initially. I mean, I've run that business from the start with my wife. She's my business partner, and we talk business probably um, another 5 or 6 hours per day all the time. Trying to see how we can improve things. So that's making it also. That's how we are organized, if I may say.
Yeah, a
That's
quick follow-up question. I know you mentioned your podcast. Do you have any recommendations for books or podcasts that you have engaged in?
Well, on books, because Sam sent me the question in advance, I'd say that there's a author called Yuval Hariri, and there's two books that he wrote, Homo Deus, and the other one is Homo Sapiens. Those are about I mean, Homo Sapiens, I recommend it. From a business point of view, it's great. Is really conceptualizing the history of humanity from the very beginning, and it's just evolving. And I think it's a great book to read. I mean, anything that this guy wrote, I think is great. Um, that would be it really in terms of books. And podcasts, it really depends. I used to listen to another podcast at one point, which was but I don't have the name top of my head. But there's a lot of podcasts about how business have been created, and I've listened to a lot of them at one point also. But we will watch also TV things like Sharks and things like that, because that's also help you learning a lot about that.
Yeah, I again, most of these I know myself and Colton, and also probably most of our audience are familiar with, especially Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Um, you quickly touched up on, how you were leveraging AI, large language models to, enhance your day-to-day productivity.
Yeah.
So on this theme of sort of capitalizing on these emerging technologies, um, e-commerce and digital commerce is a huge trend that has started, over the past few years. And I know Where Moi is selling online. So do you think you can maybe share, from your point of view, maybe the pros and cons of digital commerce and, how this sort of like shapes your brand? Are you evolving towards, less retail, more sales online? Or maybe, after COVID, have you gone back to an increased number of sales in retail? And also, you did mention having some partner stores that will sell your product for you. Could you maybe talk about your different distribution channels?
Yeah. So let's talk about the distribution channels. So we sell 28% B2C and 72 B2B. So B2B are independent store usually. They sell different brands, and this is very peculiar because in the clothing industry now you got brand with brand stores. Whereas these are specialized stores, you will go there because you need a specific pair of shoes or specific pair of tights or that kind of thing, and those stores will be offering different brands. So most of our B2B customers are multi-brand retailers. A lot of them are mom and pop stores. Some of them are bigger stores. They may have 2 or 3 stores. It depends. And also we work differently. Like for instance, in Asia, it will have stronger retailers because they're used to be importing the goods from Europe. So that means they have a stronger buying power and a better distributions. I have then in Asia, I have a lot of exclusivities. I will sell to only one certain people depending on which countries. In France, it's a lot more of mom and pop stores, and in the US also a lot of them. And our goal eventually is probably going to be 50-50, 50% B2B, 50% B2C. And B2C, obviously, it's online. We got 2 of our own store. We got 2 flagship store, one in Chicago and one in France, in south of France. Both of our stores are nearby our offices, so they're being run as separate entities, but the staffs which are working in both locations are both doing B2B and B2C. And those are really nice flagship stores. And then the online is really where we are concentrating the most. We're launching probably in 2 months' time now a new version of our website. We are using a different technology than what we've had until now. We know that this is where we need to concentrate the most because this is where it's easier to be able to show our product, promote the brand. We're strong also on social media. We're pretty strong on TikTok. We're pretty strong on Instagram. I mean, we've got over 80,000 followers on Instagram, over 10,000 on TikTok. Our customers base is young. I mean, you usually start buying Warmois leotards when you're 10, 12 years old, and then you'll still buy it when you're 25. But basically, and also our industry is a lot about looks. It's a lot about performance. So a lot of people who are now dancing, unlike in my generation, are posting videos of what they're doing, or turning and jumping and all of this. So it's a lot about what people do and being watched and watching people. So that's actually perfect for us. Now it's complicated because we sell in so many countries, but the new version of our website will be multilingual. We want to improve in the channel of distribution, but basically this is where we are going to be going, because I mean, no matter what is happening, we know those small stores, only the one which really know their business will be surviving. The other one aren't going to be surviving anyway. But it's been like this for a very long time. B2B has always been helping us building because we needed the volumes in order to build the factory and keep the factory running. But now that the volume is there, we're able to make different choices now on how we want to sell.
Yeah, so you touched on how you're trying to push more towards that B2B sales.
B2C
I know
sales.
Yeah, I know you talked a lot about your marketing strategy. Have you been able to integrate AI into your marketing strategy to be more efficient? And could you talk a little bit
I
about
mean,
that?
so we use AI on 2 different aspects, but the aspect about marketing is that we're relying, and that's mainly Elizabeth more than I do, but she does a lot of research through AI about what are the best marketing strategy. Let's say we're launching a new loyalty program. So in order to find out what was the best loyalty program, we've been interrogating AI a lot, not only about what were the solution on the market, but what were the other doing, and going through, and that's bringing us a lot of information, which are super useful. I mean, this is one of the latest example of what we're doing with AI. And the other aspect, which is marketing in a way, is that I use AI on my end orally. So basically now a lot of the most complicated email that I have had to write over the last 30 years, I'm just going to be talking to AI just like I'm doing it with you. I'm just going to I'm going to say, well, this is the customers, that the request. I give him the copy of the email. I say, well, this is what he's asking for. I don't want to say no, but I don't want to say yes either. I want to explain to him the situation. So I'm just going to be explaining everything. And then AI will be providing me with a full text, really well written in English or in French Or we work a lot in Japan. I have an agent in Japan. It used to be before where she had to explain to me in English what the customers were telling me. Now she's just sending the email in Japan, and she's assuming that I'm going to be translating it and finding out. So that's how we work with AI. First on knowledge, getting more information about what's going on, and also on the communication. And the extra thing that we're starting exploring more and more is images, pictures of products. We've been working, the technology is not there yet, but once the AI is able to actually dress a full model, one of our model with our products, it's going to be even easier than what we have to do now. But we're very much using all of that, and I'm pushing also my teams to use it more than what they're doing. Sometimes it's difficult for them. They're like, oh, but if I use AI, does it mean I'm not useful? And I'm telling them, just like I would tell you, because my staffs are young too. I'm telling them, well, this is not about how well you're going to be writing an email or how well you. It's about your intelligence in understanding what are the people in front of you, and that's something that is very human. But the rest of it, if you're able to use AI, then you should use AI.
For sure. Yeah. So kind of talking about your advice towards the younger generation. Obviously, there's so many people within today's society that want to pursue entrepreneurship. What is your advice to them? What attributes do you think are successful, are needed in order to gain success?
Okay, so there are a few, but the first one that's related to what I was telling about being former professional athlete or professional dancers is that there's so many people out there wanting to sell a product or wanting to sell a service. So you just got to be the best at what you're going to be offering. This is super important, in that you don't leave any stone unturned, that you're being very, very thorough on everything you're going to be doing, and not doing it just out of because it's a business, but really because it's a passion. And really being passionate about whatever you're going to be providing, whatever you're going to be selling, you got to be passionate about it. Because if you're passionate about it, you're going to be working on it more than once. And what people want to buy now, what people, the rarer things on earth right now is time. Time is something that you cannot expand. I mean, you got a time on this earth, and that's it. So by you spending the time in improving your product or your service to the maximum capacity, then that's what people will see. They won't know that they're buying time, but basically that's what they're buying, because you've been putting all of your expertise in. So that would be one of the first advice is really, really working 200% on what you're doing. And I'm always, when I think of that, I always think of Steve Jobs. I mean, the reason why we all got an iPhone is that this guy was completely crazy about what he was doing. He was obsessed about what he was doing. And at the end of the day, it's still there. I mean, he's got this beautiful product that he's been selling and that everybody wants because he was so obsessed about it. And that was beyond business. And he took a lot of decision at one point or another on his life, which did not seem to make business sense, but that was really about products. So that would be one thing. The second thing is being agile. I think it's super important nowadays. It's always been that way, but it's getting harder and harder. So whatever you build, you got to build it bearing in mind that you got to be agile. So whoever, if you're relying on someone, especially now, people can work from different part, around the world and different location and things like that. You got to have that agility to think, well, if something doesn't work in this country, can it work in this country? Or if it doesn't work in this market, can it work on that market? And being able to shift from one thing to another. Again, I mean, we don't know what AI is going to be able to provide in a year time or 2 years time or 3 years time. What will make the difference between you and the artificial intelligence is going to be your adaptability and the possibility to provide something, clarity to your customers. Because at the end of the day, through all of my careers, when I had people coming to me and trying or asking me to find a solution, they were coming to me because they said, well, I think this guy knows enough about what he's doing, and I think he's going to be helpful. So that will be the first, second advice. And the third advice is resilience. Because no matter what you're going to be doing, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, the train stop here. If you're screwing up, there's no way you can complain about this to anyone, or you can't go back to your mom and dad and saying, "Oh, no, you're on your own." So you got if you're right in what you wanted to build, and then you'll move up. You'll come back on your feet and go further.
Yeah, and I think, for example, when you talked on Steve Jobs, I think today in entrepreneurship, you kind of have to have a sense of delusion. I mean, look at Elon Musk. He poured every single last dollar into making spacecrafts that will be reusable, which was never thought of before, or electric cars. And so I think it's really important to have all those aspects that you're talking about.
Yeah, delusional, but also at the same time, you also got to do your homework in terms of businesses. I mean, there are, again, I was going back to if you don't have the money, you're not going to be able to do anything. So
Mm,
that's a balance of everything. But really, for me, the idea of being an athlete is really what's related the most for me as being an entrepreneur. You know, I watch a lot, Vendée Globe Challenge, all of those great skippers. I mean, for me, this is the same thing. Being and running a business is like being on a boat. I've done quite a bit of windsurfing. It's the same thing. You're on an element. You're on water, but the water is never stable. It's got
mhm,
waves. You got the winds, which could be like the business, and the winds blows in one direction and in the other, and it's never the same. And you got the sales, and the sales is your product, and the sales has to be adapted to the wind and to the water, and it's never the same. And every day, every year, you got to change the way you're going to be doing things, because as a windsurfer, I mean, at one point you got to keep the direction and going into one direction, no matter the winds, no matter the water.
That's super inspirational. Thank you, Christophe.
You're welcome, Sam, and thanks, Colton, too,
Thank you
for
so
all of
much.
your question. Okay,
It
bye.
was so nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too, Colton. Bye, Sam.
Thank you.